Imagine how much time our forefathers spent learning to act and sound British just so that they could be considered enlightened people.
This is Dr. Bunmi Oyesan, the founder of Sankofa Pan-African. In this video, she spoke about how Europe twisted history to destroy Africa culture. Listen.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of my Sankofa Pan-African series. Let's take off from the question that I raised in the last episode. Why the grand attempt to manipulate or distort history? Well, the answer to this question, raised by people like John Henry Clarke, who I mentioned in the last episode, is not far-fetched. It was done to justify slave trade and colonization. In order to justify these dastardly acts, Europe needed to fabricate a history which emphasized its presumed superiority and minimized the contributions of all other groups of people. The easiest way to justify slavery and colonization was through the fabrication of a history that glorified the role of the white race as the only race which had the ability to civilize the world. To do so, they had to deny the roles of all other people, and in the process, they dehumanized them. When and how did this falsehood gain ground? Thankfully, there are a few historians who have shed light on these questions, alongside John Henry Clarke and other scholars like Cheikh Anta Diop, Ali Mazrui, and several others who have tackled the questions. For instance, John Henry Clarke and John G. Jackson, another great historian, identified the 15th and 16th centuries as the period when the distortion of history was instituted. The long and short of it is that countries on the European continent were poor and riddled with disease. They were afraid that they would be wiped out. In desperation, the kings and queens paid and equipped mercenaries who are now known in world history as explorers. They financed them to go to continents like Africa, the Americas, and Asia, which were less populated, had and still have way more natural resources. They sent these mercenaries to go and pillage those places and bring back the bounties to Europe. I'm sure that you're familiar with some of these people, like Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Niccolo de Ponti, Ponce de Leon, Ferdinand Magellan, Amerigo Vespucci, Richard Francis Burton, David Livingstone, Henry Stanley, Henrik Barth, Frederick Russell Bonham, Mungo Park. A whole bally lot of them were unleashed to go and pillage the rest of the world. It's important that we mark those names because we keep coming across them time and time again as people who discovered this land or that river or founded, this continent and so on. So I'll return to some of these so-called explorers at a later date. Now, these were the people who helped lay the foundation for Europe to colonize the world. One irony of this era in European history should strike us today because it is being played out before our very eyes. The same European countries that were so broke and were made prosperous mainly because of the proceeds got by colonizing and pillaging other parts of the world are so self-righteous now about keeping people from those same continents out of Europe.